Welcome to another episode of the Captioned Life, a podcast about how comics and pop culture impact life and society and vice versa. Coming to you from deep in the heart of Texas, I'm Kevin.
And from Indianapolis, I'm Sean. Before we get started with this episode, please hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and follow us on social media under the username @CaptionedLife on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit. You can also find out more information and past episodes at our website, captionedlife.com.
All right. Tonight we have the great privilege of talking shop with another champion of comics and pop culture. We are lucky to have Kat Calamia join us, and she is a comics writer, editor, critic, journalist, and YouTuber. She does most of this through her YouTube channel Comics Uno, but also has bylines from IGN, DC Comics, Fandom, and TV Guide. She is also the author of a creator-owned series called They Call Her the Dancer, which we got to read, and the webtoon Slice of Life. And she's also the editor of a comic anthology called By Visibility, which launched through Kickstarter. While we have her here tonight, we're going to ask her about as much of that as possible. And we're going to play a little game because we always do that with our guests. So welcome to the show, Kat.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm very excited for this game as well.
Well, we're excited to have you on the show. And we always like to start with every episode that we do a guest interview with by asking our guests about your origin story. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into comics as a fan and to where you're at now?
Of course. Yeah, I've been a fan of comics all my life. My dad got me into comics when I was really young. He was into comics when he was really young. And back in the day, he would read all those Silver Age comics. And when he was like 13 or 14, his dad sold them all. So when he got older, his kind of mission was to find all those comics that he used to love to read. So I remember going on eBay with him and like saying, "Oh, that's a cool comic. That's a cool comic." And he would read like old school Silver Age Superman and Green Lantern and all that fun jazz. And you know, I'm 27, so around when I was a kid, the Tobey Maguire movies had come out. You had, Batman the Animated Series. You had X-Men Evolution. These type of shows that also kind of got me into comics. Static Shock. I was like, oh, I want to see more. And I already knew that comics existed because of my dad. So I'd read like Spider-Man comics and X-Men comics. And then, obviously Superman and Batman because of the Silver Age stuff I'd read. So I was always into it. And then in high school, I started to do YouTube videos on like my pull list. And I still do that. So it's been over 10 years that I've been reviewing comic books. And after college, I really decided I wanted to pursue writing. And I loved comics, and that's kind of how that started. And I started with a title called Like Father, Like Daughter. The Dancer actually was my second series, and it's a book that's been done for a while. It's been done since I finished college, or like 4 or 5 years. And it's just coming out now because of the publication history of it. It was at a publisher, and we were kind of waiting for a little while to get it published because we're trying to figure out if we could pitch it. And it was originally a black and white book, and then we started coloring it. So I went out on my own and started publishing it through Kickstarter. So this is actually kind of an older book, but being reinvented for the Kickstarter platform. And issue 2 has been released in black and white, but has never been released in color. And then issue 3 and 4 have not been released. So we're kind of gearing up to finishing the miniseries. So it's interesting to kind of look back at the book as well, because it's been a little while since I wrote that one.
Nice.
And you stole my second question, because my follow-up to that was going to be about that story. But I'll transition to a different change of pace here. So you also do a webtoon called The Slice of Life.
Yes.
And when I first saw your Twitter header, I was like, oh, that's some cool Xena and Gabrielle fan art. But then I started looking into your bio and everything, and I was like, oh, this is from her comic. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Slice of Life is something I've been doing with my writing partner, Phil. And we started this, I would say, honestly, less than a year ago. So the comic's been published for about 7 months now. And we started, probably 3 months or so before that to start writing and finding an artist. So it's been about a year that we've been working on the book. And we just had finished our crossover between my superhero book, like Follow Like Daughter, and his horror book, Haunting. And I remember saying, hey, I want to like do more of this. We should work together more. And we were actually in real life friends since I was in college. We met through one of my college friends. And, for the longest time, we wouldn't even talk about comics. Like, he knew I liked comics. He knew I worked in comics, and he liked comics for his whole life. But it just wasn't something we talked about. And then one day he's like, hey, like, I want to make my own comic. How do I do that? I gave him advice. And honestly, we became even better friends because of it. And then we started, trading scripts with each other and saying, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And we just noticed that we, A, worked really well together, but B, we had a similar writing style and liked some similar stuff within writing. So I said, let's write this crossover. And again, that was done. So we're both queer creators, and we saw Webtoon as a really good opportunity to hit an audience that I feel like comics hit yet. Like, DC Comics, this was before DC Comics did the Batman Webtoon. I know that AWA does some Webtoon stuff. I don't know if they still do, but, comics haven't really fully gotten into Webtoon, and there's more readers on Webtoons than actually that reads comics right now. So I'm like, why wouldn't you try to get into that audience and try to even widen your audience? So this was a book perfect for, a younger audience and that platform. So that's what we ended up doing. And I know I buried the lead here, but the book is about an anime character who comes to life and falls in love with a high school cheerleader. So it's a romance, but it's really a story about what is life. It's really breaking down the genre of a slice of life. So that comes out weekly, and we're super proud of it. And we collect the physical version through Kickstarter. So we just had a Kickstarter for issue 1 that we were super proud of. That followed by Visibility, which has been a great campaign as well, that had like over 1,300 backers, and was a anthology about bisexuality, which we're actually looking for now, volume 2 for submissions. That's going to be ending January 14th, and we're super proud of that as well.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. It seems like with Webtoons, it's funny and interesting that you bring that up in terms of how many people are using that, because we've had a couple people on this show who have created their own comics through Webtoons. It seems like it's a really accessible and great way for people who are new to that area of being a comic creator that doesn't have like the networking opportunities or anything to get into like the bigger publishing, that if they wanted to just create and start something of their own, seems like Webtoons is a really great platform for that.
It is. I would say it's interesting because I think there's two paths. Like, I do see a lot of indie creators who already have comics going into Webtoon, and I see successes and pluses and minuses with that. The minus is that Webtoon is a very it has a very genres that it hits, right? And it also is sliced differently. So the way you read a Webtoon is different than what you would read a comic. Comic is all about the page turn and the panel work. And for a Webtoon, it's all about the scroll. It's a different format. It's a different way to read. So something that we did with Slice of Life is that we purposely made it as a Webtoon, because we wanted to make it as a, for that platform. But at the same time, we always thought, okay, how can we make this a comic? And I think some people go on Webtoon and they only just think about it as their comic and not think about the Webtoon platform as a whole. So I think that's something I would love to see more of, is people that do both, but also think of both mediums while they're doing it, and maybe even creating that project to do both mediums.
Right. Yeah. Well, it seems like that's starting to be a reality for the bigger publishers as well, too, because Marvel has their Infinity Comics that's designed for you just to be scrolling up, basically. So, yeah, and it's just like what you said. I think it's a great idea to keep that in mind, like not just the traditional comic way of doing things, but also thinking about the platform using as well, too. So,
I feel like such an old man on my lawn when it comes to stuff like that.
Internet comics.
because I hate watching videos on my phone, like no matter what, like even if they're just YouTube videos. I don't really love that. I mean, TikTok is different, but when it comes to comics, like my wife just bought me a tablet for me to be able to read digital comics on it, because between living in a rural area where I don't have access to go to a store all the time, and then also you know, just having the time to sit and read, digital is much more accessible. And so I feel like, oh, look at me, I'm evolving as a human being. But like part of me still just like, I want to smell the paper, and I want to I want to be able to read things the old school way. I want to be able to watch stuff on my big TV and whatnot. And I have a hard time adjusting to all that. But the Webtoons platform to me is about that accessibility, because you can get it anywhere on any device. There's not much of a difference between looking at it on your phone versus your desktop or your laptop or whatever. And for those types of things, I really like it. The people that we've met, the creators that we've met, that they were that they had created something on Webtoon, it's always a very positive experience to go to the website and be able to see that. It just makes me, I guess it took a while for me to make that my comfort zone, because I'm like a purist, or I'm old school.
Right.
Which is understandable, though. Honestly, I'm a Wednesday warrior. I get my comics every Wednesday. I like to read it physically. I really do. Like when it comes to comics, like I'd have the opportunity to read them digitally. Like as a critic, I can, but I don't want to. I rather read it printed. But then again, like Webtoon, it's free and it's made to read that way. So I think there's pluses and minuses to every medium in that regard of should you be physical or on the web. But I'm just glad that's hopefully reaching people that normally wouldn't read. And I think Webtoon's really proving that.
I think one of the other things that helps me like make the transition to digital is because I'm also like a comics collector. So I have things that are old and sort of valuable. And I always have this hesitation to actually pick them up and read them, because I don't want to ruin them. and that sentiment alone forced me to where I am now, where I essentially, I only read like the trades, because I don't want to mess with my comics and I want to be able to read it all at the same time. I mean, you can see like that's just all books, like I have hundreds and hundreds of trades. But reading them digital, there's nothing I can accidentally tear. My digital comics are all 9.9 gems. So
that is very true.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing I really like about digital is, for me, that's what got me back into comics, was the Marvel Unlimited platform.
Oh yeah.
And then that's what got me back into like buying the paper version of comics. But what I really love about what they did, and I don't think it's just Marvel, but I think it's a lot of the big publisher that has their own platforms or apps, is that they've created Smart Panel, which is not only can you like look at it page by page, but it'll guide you by showing you like what panel that you need to read first. And for me, that was always helpful, because sometimes I can't figure out in a comic like who is saying what first and what order. And that Smart Panel not only takes you to the panel, but sometimes it might take you to a section in that panel, so that way you can read it like the way that it's intended for. And there's no like guessing game on like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And then you have to like figure out like, oh, okay, if I read in this order, then it all makes sense now. So
it's like comics with training wheels.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And my wife, who's not a comics person, would probably love that.
Right. Yeah. So Kat, switching gears a little bit, you just finished a Kickstarter campaign for your comic anthology called By Visibility, which you talked about a little bit earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project? You said it's a passion project for you, but can you tell us a little bit about like why that project is important, maybe specifically to you, or just important in general to have out there in the world?
Of course, yeah. So I am a bisexual creator, and I feel like over the years, outside of comics even, there's not a lot of bisexual representation. So I made it because of that. I think a younger me would have appreciated it. And I think it was really important to have that representation. And I remember like when I was trying to figure out my next project, I had a group of friends that we all do Kickstarter comic stuff. We do like a monthly happy hour where we just talk about Kickstarter and talk about the projects we're about to do. And I brought up like, oh yeah, no, I was thinking about doing this anthology, but I'm probably going to wait a little while. I'll figure it out because it felt a little daunting. It was a lot, and I never had made an anthology at that point. So I was like, oh, I'm doing my little corner here and doing my stuff. And then everyone's like, why don't you do that now? Like, that sounds perfect. Like, do it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So I came up with a submission form and got a lot of great creators. And then me and my co-writer Phil, we ended up looking through all the submissions. He was the assistant editor for it, and it just came out to be a really great book. We worked with so many wonderful people, and it made us want to do a second one because it just from the feedback that we got, where people said exactly what I said. There's not enough bisexual representation that's specifically about bisexuality, and I would say authentically about bisexuality. So I feel like there's just so many stories that we didn't have a chance to include in volume 1. And I think of volume 2, volume 3, volume 4, we still won't be scratching the surface. So we just want to tell as many stories as we can and get as many voices as we can.
And when did you wrap up that Kickstarter?
We wrapped that up in September. So we ended it by I think the week before was like Bi Visibility Day. It was a week of Bi Visibility, so that was in September. And then like right after that, we launched Slice of Life, which was in October. And they were like, holiday time, we should take a break from our Kickstarters. And then we're launching another, which is the Dancer. We're launching in January. But yeah, we launched it in August, September. It was a really good time for Kickstarter. It did really well on the platform. I got over 1,300 backers. We got $30,000. This time around, we'd like to do volume 2 for Pride Month. So that is our aim. So honestly, it didn't take that long to do the book. It was probably one of the easier books to work on because I didn't have to write all the stories, and all the teams just worked really well together. So it was pretty seamless to work on that book.
Cool. Are you connecting writers with artists? Like, are you taking written submissions and connecting them with artists for this project?
Yeah, so that's something I really want to do differently. I know a lot of anthologies, especially on an indie level, they'll make creators pay. So they'll like pretty much how indie comics works. Like they'll have the creative team, either a writer or an artist. They have to pay their page rates. They got to pay for the lettering and all that, and like put their story together. And be like, hey, here's this thing. But for us, we really wanted to pay everybody. So we wanted to pay the writer, we wanted to pay the artist, we wanted to pay everyone that's involved. And then also another thing about anthologies, I feel like it's usually you have to bring your own creative team as well. So you have to either know an artist or you have to know a writer and then present that story. And for us, we're like, well, maybe this is someone's first story. Maybe they're a veteran, maybe an artist wants to write their own story. So we really want to make it flexible. And so a writer, they have to submit their script. But they could also say, this is the person I'm working with for my art team. This is who I want. An artist could just have to submit their portfolio, and that's how we work it. Another thing I guess that's different for us too is that we do ask for a finished script. I know a lot of anthologies don't do that. They're just like, give us a pitch and we'll get a general idea. But we really want to know, if you don't finish a script, then you're probably not going to finish a script when you get hired. So we want to make sure you actually finish your work. So like, what your work ethic is. But too, like we want to get a gist of your writing style. I just felt like a better way to craft a better anthology. So that's something we ended up doing that was a little different here too. So the script does have to be done. And then, if you're accepted, we'll edit it with you. And then some people will have an artist with them if we thought the artist paired well with them. If not, we'll either get someone that had a portfolio through a submission form or just an artist that we've worked with the past, or, an artist we're newly making a relationship with. So we really try to juggle in a different way and just, again, craft the best book we can, but give opportunities to as many different type of creators as possible as well.
Awesome. You've spoken here recently in some of your YouTube videos about LGBTQ plus storylines in comics. And I was wondering if you would share some of your thoughts on that with us, something along the lines about where those storylines are, and do you feel like it's finally getting the attention that it deserves?
I do. I think that we always have work to do, but I'm happy to see characters like Tim Drake come out as bi. I'm happy to see characters like John Kent come out as bi, but I do think some of those stories are too soon to tell if it's, and I hate saying this, but if they're just utilizing it for the headline. So
Right.
we have seen it in the past where it's just like, oh, they're bi, and then you never see stories with them, or you never talk about their bi-ness or talk about their queerness. And I hope that, and we know that I think it's out. I think the Batman Urban Legends, they did have a story with Tim. going on a date with Bernard. So that was awesome. And hope, but then also it's like, why not give Tim Drake his own series? Why can't we see a whole series about Tim Drake and his discovery of his bisexuality and other things as well? And then same thing for John, that just happened. So it's hard to tell if, how much page count will be told with his queerness. But I think it's such a good thing that they did it. And I'm really excited to see those stories. And I think that, these are two great characters to do that with. And yeah, I would love to see just more queer representation. I think we have some wonderful characters that, again, I think the biggest issue that I think we have to go over through comics is actually giving them panel time. Because we do have some wonderful characters like Carolina and Nico. And then, Runaways just ended. And we had that Pride book. And you're like, but where can I see more of them? Like, I think that's the big thing that the mainstream comics have to do is give us a queer book of some sort. And again, I'm not saying that the whole book has to be queer, but I think it'd be nice to talk about their queerness every once in a while too, if that's something that they're trying to utilize. So I think we're in a much better place than we were 5 years ago, but I think there's always work that can be done.
Yeah. So, we gotta move towards the point where these things are part of the plot and not just something to to hawk the headline and to look at this character, he's gay or he's queer, but then write them out in the next episode or the next issue. And
exactly. It's a disservice to everybody.
Yeah. Or even just that becomes the only thing about that person's identity. And I see that can be aggravating as well too. I mean, it aggravates me where I'm just I want to know more about this person beyond just that one part of their identity. I'm glad to see that, and I want to read that and see that, but there's also more to a person than just that part of it. And I don't see it too often, but I've heard stories of other comics where they've done that, where it's just it's just like what you said, Kat. It's just more of using it as a way to draw people in and then just never really do anything. And so it feels really like a cheap device to use to try to almost exploit that to get more readers in. And it just does a disservice for everybody. So,
yeah, you want authentic characters. And I think, that's something we really want to do, of course, by visibility, but I think a bigger example of that is Slice of Life. Right. It's a comic that is a queer romance, but we don't want the book to just be a queer romance. It's a story about life and the characters have struggles and positives outside of their romance and outside of their queerness, but also queerness is a big part of their story because they are queer people. So I think it's a balancing act. You obviously don't want to not talk about their queerness because that's part of them. But at the same time, I agree. It can't be their only part of their character because that's a two-dimensional person. That's not, queer people don't always just talk about being queer, but it's not talking about being queer.
It's not it's the defining factor for their decision making. We're all the same. You still make decisions the same way.
Right.
All right. Exactly. We appreciate your take on that and sharing that with us because that's something as a podcast that we want to continue to be a venue for ideas and opinions and stuff, especially where, like we said, where real life and fiction come together, and how the things we experience in life are reflected in the pages of the comics we read. And you're doing a fantastic job with this because you're somebody who maybe didn't see yourself in a comic that you were picking up on a Wednesday, and you went and created your own. And I think that's what's important for people to understand about representation, is that we're not trying, the comics industry isn't trying to pander to everybody. It's twofold. They're trying to show representation. They're trying to show representation that's reflective of the world that we live in. But at the same time, the more people that see themselves in your comics, the more comics they're going to sell. So I think it's an important step in the right direction.
100% agree.
Okay, well, that was some serious stuff, and now we're going to get kind of zany.
I
didn't have a good segue for playing this game, but we are gonna play a game because we play a game with all of our guests, and it's not gonna be any different. Here's what we're gonna do. Sean didn't know about this ahead of time. Kat didn't know about this ahead of time. In honor of her upcoming Kickstarter for The Dancer, we're going to play a game called The Dance Assassin Time Machine. And
I love it.
And what's going to happen is I'm going to read you a description of a year that involves a dance craze and a famous movie about an assassin or a hitman. Hit person, because they're not all men.
Right.
And then you're going to guess what you think is the year, and we'll play Price is Right. Well, I mean, I guess no, we'll just whoever gets closest. Because
I can't promise I'll be good at this, but I gotta try my dang hardest.
Hey, we've done games like this several times on the show, and even the train wrecks are fun to listen to. So
oh yeah, they're really good.
We're gonna kick it off with the first one. So listen carefully to my description, and I will take Kat's guess first, and then Sean's, and then whoever gets it right will guess first the next time.
Gotcha.
Okay. You could dance the night away doing the Carlton, popularized by the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air character, but be on the lookout for this kind but deadly assassin, Leon the Professional, if you go back to this year.
Ooh.
Let me read it one more time.
I think we know it's the 90s. Fresh Prince. I'm gonna go with 92.
And Sean, your guess?
I was thinking 93, actually.
Well, Sean, you would be wrong. It's 1992.
Ooh.
Way to go, Kat.
Maybe I'll be good at this game.
Yeah, I had a flashback because we had a guest on the show where we had done like a year kind of game like this, and one time like she guessed a year and I just guessed, I didn't know what year it was, but I'm like, I'm going to guess just 1 year up, just so if it's older, I'm closer. And I'm at a, just kind of like a flashback, like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing now, is just guessing the next year in case it's older or younger.
That's a smart tactic. Smart tactic for sure.
Yeah, but in this case, I truly thought it was 93 for some reason. So it wasn't a technique I was actually using. So
I saw Leon on Netflix and I kind of remembered seeing 92 next to it. So I was like, okay. And obviously Fresh Prince. So
I don't think I know about Leon.
It's the movie. It's in the United States, it's called The Professional. And it's about what's his name? French actor. His name is Jean Reno.
Yeah, he's really good. I like him.
And he befriends Natalie Portman as a child.
Oh, I vaguely remember hearing about this. I haven't seen it though, so I'll have to check it out.
There's a plant in it. It's a solid movie.
Gotcha.
Okay. Second one is going to be, if you traveled back to this year, you'd be dancing the Worm or the YMCA while in line to see Shogun Assassin, a big screen adaptation of the classic manga Lone Wolf and Cub.
Ooh. Okay. I think this is the 80s. I think I'm going to go with 88.
I think it's younger than that. I want to say it's probably 83.
The year is 1980.
Oh,
1980. Yes. The Worm and the YMCA were holdovers from the 70s, but they were still the last days of disco.
Right.
Were still going on in 1980, and Shogun Assassin came out in 1980.
So who got that point? I did? Or?
You got that point, Sean. Okay. So it's tied 1.
It's whoever's closest. All right.
Here's the deal. Third one. Brad Pitt starred as a mob hitman sent to recover the money stolen from a card game in Killing Them Softly. The same year, Korean rapper Psy was dominating the airways with Gangnam Style.
Oh, gosh. I go first because I got the point last time, right?
You do.
You get to go first.
I want to say 2010 because I remember when Gangnam Style came out, I think I was teaching when that happened. So I want to say 2000. Let me go back one more year, actually, 2009. I'm going to say 2009.
I don't think I was in high school when that came out. So I think I was in college. And I graduated high school in 2012. So
okay.
I think it was 2013.
The correct answer is 2012.
Oh,
I was close.
Interesting. I wonder why I thought I was teaching when that happened.
I don't know, Kat,
Yeah.
if you've ever watched The Price is Right, but when Sean spews out all of that information, he's like, "Oh, I think it's this." You're the right thing to do is just guess 1 year above him,
Yeah.
and then you'll be right.
Yep.
Because I was like, "Oh, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna do?" And luckily, you got it. So that's great.
Yep.
Okay,
You
here
just
we
need
go.
to be closer. That's all you need to do.
Just closer. You don't have to be right.
Right.
Okay. If you traveled back to this year, you'd have a hard time escaping the catchy song La Macarena and the dance that accompanied. Gina Davis would also be hot on your tail as an amnesiac hit woman in The Long Kiss Goodnight. I had to make sure I was saying that right, amnesiac. I'll do that one more time. If you traveled back to this year, you'd have a hard time escaping the catchy song La Macarena and the dance that accompanied. Gina Davis would also be hot on your tail as an amnesiac hit woman in The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Well, I definitely wasn't alive for this, so it's before 94. I'm going to go with the 80s. Let's guess 88 again.
Sean.
I don't think it was that old. I'm going to go with 1990.
The correct answer is 1996.
What? I was
Yes.
two. That's crazy.
1996. This also starred an up and coming actor named Samuel L. Jackson, who helped Gina Davis rediscover who she was in the movie, which is
Nice.
actually a really good movie. All right, here we go. So Sean, you're going first. The score is tied 2-2 now,
Damn.
with 3 to go. 1, 2, 3. Yes, 3 to go. So there's going to be a winner. All right. Way back in this year, The Moonwalk and Thriller by Michael Jackson were still all the craze when John Hurt and Tim Roth starred as two hitmen transporting a key witness against the mob to his execution in The Hit.
I want to say this has to be 1982.
Ooh. I'm going to go with 85.
The correct answer is 1984.
Ooh. I got it.
That was the
Got
year I
it
was
by-
born.
Got it by one. Yes. So the Moonwalk came out at the beginning of, earlier in 1983, but Thriller came out around in August, and ran through the end of the year. It was the most popular song for a long, long time. So that bled into 1984. They didn't come out
Gotcha.
the same year, but Thriller was the jam in 84.
Okay.
So Kat's going to go first on this next one. Legendary hitman and Energizer Bunny of assassins John Wick was wrapping up the third chapter of his film franchise at the same time as flossing had taken the world by storm in this year.
Oh, okay, so it has to be during Fortnite days. I don't know how old Fortnite is. I'm guessing it's like 3 years old or so, maybe. 2000.
2000?
2018. Yeah.
2018.
2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Okay. I think you kind of muted out on the 18.
Oh,
part of
okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to go 2019 because I was going back and forth between 2018 and 2019. Since you guessed that, I'm just going to go with 2019. So
It is 2019.
yes.
Ooh.
And I had the edge on that one because I remember when my son was learning to do the floss, and he's just at that age where he can kind of figure out like how to do like dance moves, not like well, but like they do like movement breaks all the time. And so they always do like dancing to these videos.
Mhm.
And so like I actually had to teach him how to do the floss because I was in show choir in high school. So I kind of figured out like, how to make the movement. So I had to teach him like how to do the hips and then just do the arms and then putting them together and everything. So it bled all together.
True confession, when I'm standing by myself, like at bus duty in the morning, I will try to floss. Like I'll just practice it. I'm still trying to get it like 3 years later, but my comically short arms and wide body, like just the combination doesn't line up well. I kind of look like Humpty Dumpty having a seizure out there. Or Humpty
different
Dumpty
type of
being
different
stuck.
dance move.
Yeah, it's something totally different. All right. It
Yeah.
all comes down to this. Sean, you're gonna have to make sure that you put some like real tense music underneath the game, okay? Because it's back and forth.
I will
It's like
do that.
It's like a
This is an
Wimbledon
intense one.
tennis match of of trivia here. Okay.
Yeah.
If you hitched a ride on the Dance Assassin Time Machine to this year, you could walk like an Egyptian to the multiplex to see James Woods star as a hitman helping detective/author Brian Dennehy to write his next book in bestseller. I'll do that one more time. If you hitched a ride on the Dance Assassin Time Machine to this year, you could walk like an Egyptian to the multiplex to see James Woods star as a hitman helping detective/author Brian Dennehy to write his next book in bestseller.
Man, that's a good one. I'm trying to remember when that came out. I'm going to say 1987. I have a feeling that's wrong.
I'm going
All
to
right,
go
Kat.
with 1985.
1985. The correct answer is, drumroll, Sean, you suck. It's 1987.
Oh,
Sean is never going to let a guest win a
but this
contest
is
on
a
the
close
show.
one. This is a close one.
Oh my God. You know, like people are going to listen to all these episodes and be like, this game was rigged because Sean always says he never knew. And then somehow he always wins.
And
You're a good guesser. You're
And
a
let
good
me-
guesser.
and let me tell you something. So here's the thing. I have a bunch of tabs open on my on the game that I was, I have it on a Google slide because I
Mhm.
have graphics and everything. But here's the thing, and I'm going to do this for the listeners. Will be like, well, if you did your research, when I wrote,
He's
when
talking
I
about
wrote-
Madden, by the way.
Yeah, here's the deal, because Madden, my son would be the
His
one to
son,
point this out. So in my Google thing, my Google document that I created all this stuff in, I put down the Carlton and the Professional in 1992. I'm looking at the tab that's open that has the Professional on IMDb, and it says 1994. And so I don't know. It doesn't matter. Sean still wins.
Oh yeah, no. Either way, I lost.
But I wanted to
worse.
I wanted to correct that before somebody was like, you know what, I'm not listening to this podcast anymore because these people don't know anything about pop culture.
They don't know Leon. Then I'm done.
Yeah. Our deep background knowledge of French assassin films from the 90s is, I mean, it is the French assassin film from the 90s. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to discredit anybody that just stumbled onto this podcast and they have a giant Leon poster on their wall. But I made that mistake. That's not on Kat or Sean. That was me last minute prepping. But thank you, Kat, for playing because you are a good sport.
Yeah.
And you
Of
did
course,
really,
thank you.
really well. You did really, really well.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun. That was cool.
If I did 9, if I did 9 instead of 7, you probably would have taken it. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Sure, we know that. We know that. Kill Bill would have been in there, and we would have been set.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Were you waiting for Kill Bill? He's like, oh, he's got to
Oh,
bring
yeah,
up Kill
no, I
Bill.
was
He's got to
definitely
bring
waiting
up
for
Kill
Kill
Bill at
Bill.
some point. Yeah.
Yeah, never did.
I dropped the ball on that. I'm sorry.
Well, there's
It
so
wasn't
many
about
to
the
choose
movies. The
from.
movies to me were easier to find because I could think of things and then I could hit IMDb. It was the getting the dance craze to line up with the assassin movie that was harder. So
No, this is a lot of research. I applaud.
I thought about like playing a game where I gave you a term and asking you if it was like a dance move, a wrestling finishing move, or like an item of foreign cuisine.
Oh yeah, I don't think.
But
I would've
that
won.
was 3 things to research instead of 2. So I went with this option.
Next time, next issue.
Yeah. When Volume 2 goes out.
Well, and hopefully we can get you back on the show at some point to talk about your future projects because we'd love to have you.
I love that. This was so much fun. It was such a pleasure.
Well, good. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we let you go, want to say thank you for coming on and sharing your journey with us. But before we let you go, we want you to tell our listeners where they can find you and your work online.
Of course, best place to find me is on Twitter at Comic Uno, and I will 100% have a Twitter pinned if you're listening in January for my dancer campaign, which I think is going to be live soon while you listen to this, or is live. So go check it out. It's about a assassin/dancer who has to deal with their childhood trauma. So definitely go check that one out.
You want to plug your YouTube channel as well?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Go check out my YouTube channel, Comic Uno. I do weekly reviews for comics And, I try doing topic videos as well. So when Tim Drake comes out as bi, you can go check out those type of videos. And yeah, those are the best places to find me. If there's anything else to plug, like the webtoon and stuff like that, it's easily found on my Twitter.
Awesome. Sean, before we wrap up, do you have anything you want to plug?
Like what?
Like Sean's
like
gonna be
podcast.
Right, yeah. Like, hey, have you guys heard about our podcast?
No, Sean should have been like, yeah, well, I'm gonna be doing the dishes this week, and you can show me some support on Twitter.
Yeah, I guess that's a missed opportunity. I wasn't even thinking about that. I'll be ready for next time. How about that?
No, I surprised you. I jumped out on that.
I know Kevin likes to do that just to mess with me because he knows I don't respond well to like impromptu.
Yeah, Sean's not an improv person,
but you still do so well in these games. So I don't know.
Sean knows his stuff. He's just not an improv person. What's
funny is in high school I was actually part of an improv comedy group, but my thing was physical comedy. Like I did physical comedy really well. I couldn't do scenarios very well. Like you can give me an idea and I would run with it. But if you ask me to come up with an idea, I would just freeze on the spot. And this is exactly what happens is you ask me something to come up with an original thought on the spot. And I can't do that.
Sean's like, whose line is it anyway? It's not mine.
Right. Yeah.
But you will floss. You'll do the floss no matter.
Oh yeah.
What.
I'll do any of that stuff. Anything that doesn't require speaking and just more physical action, I'll do whatever you want.
That is why, Sean, that's why we got to get you to cosplay as Chewbacca, because now that I know that you can flossing Chewbacca would be even funnier. Kat, you can't tell that Sean is like 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Yeah, so
I'm 5'2", so
he's an enormous human being. So that's why he's like physical comedy for him is extra funny, because when you're enormous and you fall down,
yeah,
I mean it's funny. But thank you again, Kat, for coming on and hanging out with us for a little while today. Hey, that wraps up another cut that. That wraps up another episode of the Captioned Life. We hope you enjoyed listening. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button on whatever major podcast platform you listen to us on. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Captioned Life. And if you like what we're doing, give us a shout out and tag us in a post. For more information about us and all of our previous episodes, please visit thecaptionedlife.com. Until next time, go check out Kat on her YouTube channel and some of her books.
Do it.